Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
One of the hallmarks of a liberal Western democracy is, or are, free and fair elections. Unfortunately, in a town like Oldham, elections are not free, and they most definitely are not fair. I've never run for election before, and whilst I'd witnessed firsthand from the outside looking in a whole host of outrageous actions by candidates and their teams and those who have a duty in protecting the integrity of elections, what I've witnessed firsthand as a candidate has absolutely staggered me. It started not when the election was called, but in the lead up, some months prior to the election was called. And it started with the MP at the time, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon, in collaboration with the council, the Labour Party controlled council, and partnered with the police and mainstream media, attempting to criminalise me. And for those of you who are unaware of how elections work, if you have a criminal record with a custodial sentence, even if it's suspended, you can't run for election. The Labour Party were actively involved in attempting to frame me. I'll say that again. The Labour Party were actively involved in attempting to frame me. And the last attempt that failed was on May the 2nd when the local elections were run. Where the key witness, a Labour Party campaigner, one of Arud Shah's main champions, ambassadors, cheerleaders, fabricated a case against me. Her name is Gail Hadfield Granger. And aided by the police and the CPS, they continued this fabrication with the support of the Oldham Times, the Manchester Evening News, all the way to a case where the witness didn't turn up because she'd gone on holiday to Cos. And the CPS attempted to keep me on bail so that they could smear my name up to the election. The judge saw through it and threw the case out. So what happens in a town like Oldham is when people step forward and make a stand against those that control the town, the entire machinery of the state is mobilised against them. The politicians, the press, the police, and even the CPS. And all those of you who followed me for the last 3, 4, 5 years have witnessed this firsthand. Separate to the machinery of the state attacking you, the gangsters that are directly associated with the Labour Party. And I say this again, the gangsters that are directly associated with Jim McMahon's Labour Party are mobilised to attempt to silence you. In this case, silence me. The gangster I make reference to, of course, and he's just one of them, is Dale Cregan's getaway driver, the convicted heroin dealer, Irish Immy. He's been convicted not once but twice during the period of my campaign. Having failed to stop me, I am convinced that the fake firebombing, and I say fake, not that it wasn't a firebombing, but it was clearly, in my opinion, a setup with an unlocked car. The firebombing of Arooj Shah's car was an attempt, in partnership with the MP at the time, Jim McMahon, who went running to the Daily Mail attempting to incriminate me for writing something that was published after the car was firebombed, by the way. McMahon, if you can't tell the time. And when we released the video footage showing exactly what had happened, the criminals at Greater Manchester Police, and I'll say that again, Andy Burnham's criminals in control of Greater Manchester Police, refused to question the leader of Oldham Council. If it was you and me, we would have been questioned and charged. I have no doubt of that. And if that video footage had not been released, I would be in prison. I have no doubt of that either. There have been court case after court case. I think the term is lawfare, in an attempt to silence me, which included Oldham Council, senior solicitor at Oldham Council, lawyer at Oldham Council, and a certain Alexander Bogotoff spending tens of thousands of pounds of your money attempting to take an injunction out against me on behalf of the Labour Party. Not on behalf of the council, on behalf of the Labour Party. The leader of the council has posted love hearts on the offer of my murder. And if you've been following affairs lately, you'll see a bunch of Pakistani and Bangladeshi hoodlums have been mobilised by the Labour Party splinter group that I make reference to as the Oldham Group, which includes Councillor Shoaib Akhtar, Councillor Cameron Ghaffar, Councillor Abdul Wahid. These individuals have direct associations with organised crime. If not all of them, some of them. Direct associations with organised crime in the sense that they have family members. Cameron Gaffar's solicitors have written to me, threatening to sue me if I don't do X, Y, and Z. They've just made up their allegations, by the way. Councillor Cameron Ghaffar has took offence to me objecting to a 71-year-old pensioner supporter of mine being chased down the street, from which he suffered horrific injuries. He was chased down the street by 3 Asian men. It was reported to the police. Of course, the police have done nothing, because the police will do nothing, because the police are in the pockets of the politicians who are in the pockets of the cartels. Cameron Ghaffar claims I've inferred that somehow he was responsible. I did no such thing, because the last I looked, I made specific reference to how, when this canvasser of mine was attacked, he was told in no uncertain terms that this was a Labour Party town. Now, perhaps Councillor Cameron Ghaffar has forgot which party he represents, because he's now with the Oldham Group, which isn't the Labour Party. Previously, of course, he was with the Conservatives, and prior to that, he was with the Labour Party. And anyone who knows how the politics in the Pakistani community works, you need to understand that they're with no group but their own group. These people are sectarians. The Oldham group is sectarian. Councillor Cameron Gaffer and his team are sectarians. Having failed to intimidate me with legal threats and physical threats, the smear campaigns have been led by the Oldham group's candidate, the solicitor, Zafar Iqbal. And you'll see I've refrained from saying anything negative about Zafar Iqbal. Zafar Iqbal is regularly flanked by two Bangladeshi men. One is Muhammad Ali, the builder, who, when he isn't running away from clients on unfinished projects, even his friends won't hire him for a builder, he's desperately fending off friends of his who have contacted him because he's been sending messages to their wives. Isn't that right, Muhammad Ali? Sending messages to the wives of your friends. And of course, some of you who are on this group, will know that he's tried the same with you. Muhammad Ali, of course, is a married man. You can see him on Fridays at the mosque, wearing his gown, being devout. Alongside Muhammad Ali is a lad who goes by the name of Junaid. But very few people know me as Junaid because he's known as Fat Junaid to his friend in the community. You'll have seen him flanking Zafar Iqbal. Zafar, the company you keep. You know, a man is judged by the company he keeps. Junaid and his friends, Mushtaq Mir and the others, and the guy called Abdul Razak, who I reported to the police, and the police refused to arrest him last year for clear incitement of violence towards me, by the way. Clear black and white incitement of violence. These lads are protected because they're members of the cartel by Greater Manchester Police, and Abdul Jabbar, who's the Labour Party councillor, who's somehow, refuses to speak out against what takes place. Why, Councillor Jabbar? Is it because you endorse what's taking place? You're quick to condemn other acts against other individuals, but complete silence to what is done to me and my family. Junaid, councillor, no, he's not a councillor, is it? Candidate Zafar Iqbal, perhaps doesn't know, was kicked out of the mosque, the Oldham Muslim Centre, for stealing the charity box. Is that right, Junaid? You were kicked out of the mosque for stealing the charity box. His brother, Zafar Iqbal, is a convicted rapist who spent time in prison for rape. So I'm not surprised that the likes of Muhammad Ali and overweight Junaid have gone running to someone like Zafar Iqbal to attempt to discredit me. And attack me. But that's not enough, is it, Zafar? Because your mate, your lieutenant, one of the guys who signed off your nominations, Councillor Abdul Wahid, his brother is a convicted drug dealer. Oh yeah. Councillor Wahid's brother is a convicted drug dealer. When we talk about the cartels, One of the immediate and direct links is the family members of the councillors and whether they have any associations with what I make reference to as organised crime. Councillor Shoaib Akhtar, who I considered a friend until recently, has also been exposed for his role in attempting to not just smear me, but have me attacked. His son, who was a Labour Party candidate in Shaw, if you remember, has been caught red-handed sending text messages to people claiming I'm not a Muslim. Now that isn't to question my faith, but is to have incitement of violence against me. Raja Mir is not a Muslim. Did you know Raja Mir is not a Muslim? So much so that an imam from one of the other mosques in town was outside Oldham Central Mosque, and I'd gone in there for my prayers in the evening because I was passing campaigning, stopped me and I started talking to him. He goes, "You're Raja Mir?" I said, "Yes, I am." He goes, "I've just been having a conversation with people sending me messages that you're not a Muslim. Well, I've just seen you come out of the mosque." He then laughed and took a selfie with me and promised to vote for me. But Councillor Shoaib Akhtar's brother, son, is set smearing me. Now, all this time, I've said nothing untoward about the candidate Zafar Iqbal. Why? Why should I? I stand on my own merits. People will vote for me because of who I am. People can make their own minds up after 5 years, 6 years as to what I've endured and how I'm still here. It's a miracle we're going into this election tomorrow. Win or lose, it's a miracle. Of course, well, what Zafar Iqbal might know or might not know, you'll have to ask him, is that one of his other councillors associated with him was bailed by Greater Manchester Police for rape. That's right, isn't it, Zafar? One of the other councillors, senior councillors associated with you, was recently bailed by Greater Manchester Police for rape. Some team you have there, Zafar. And still, I'm not going to criticise his campaign. You know why? Because his campaign is that which there's just no substance to criticise. If there's any heavyweight policies or anything like that, I'd critique it, but there isn't. But what I'm appalled at is how these Pakistani sectarianists have operated and the individuals they've gathered around them to harass and intimidate myself and members of my team. Members of my team who bravely came out campaigning, every one of them has been abused horrendously by these people. Criminally abused. And reports have gone to Greater Manchester Police, and Greater Manchester Police ignore them because Greater Manchester Police are complicit. So in all of this election in Oldham has not been about Jim McMahon. It's been about Raja Mir. I was delivering leaflets with a friend of mine. He's known as a doc. He's a doctor. Took some time off work to come and help me deliver some leaflets in the afternoon. And we're looking at each other and I'm like, you know, with everything we hear You'd think I was the incumbent and I was the one who was the MP being ousted or being challenged. We both had a giggle about it. So in terms of rigging an election in a town like ours, there's all of that you've got to get past before you even have the courage to stand. Only yesterday, after my interview on PBTV, the Mushtaq Mir team, that Greater Manchester Police still refused to arrest, who, by the way, has openly claimed that he has senior police officers on side. Openly claimed he has senior police officers on side. And you know what? I believe him. I believe him. This cut a 10-second sentence of mine, cut it in a third, and tried to make it out that I'm a supporter of Nigel Farage. And they used a Nigel Farage interview on Sky with Trevor Phillips where he criticises Muslims in terms of their support for Hamas, some survey that Trevor Phillips presented on his Sky show. What's that got to do with me? If I was a supporter of Nigel Farage, I would have just gone and secured the Reform candidacy and stood as the Reform candidate. So no, I've maintained from the beginning, win or lose, the people of this town have got to stand up for themselves. We have to fight this on our own. We have to fight this for ourselves, for our children, for our communities. And win or lose, we are going to that fight tomorrow. I'm not like these people. I'm not a rapist. Convicted like that Junaid's brother. Definitely not sent any female person on this journey at all any suggestive text message or messenger message or dropped into the messages or whatever the phrase is, let alone contacted the wives of any of my friends. I owe no one any money. And have definitely not been bailed for rape. I'm not a convicted drug dealer. And I've not stolen the donation box out of any mosque. There's a guy called Mohammed Razak. He fancies himself as some form of Islamic scholar. If you read his messages, those rants at me, and those that support me, is on the verge, if he could, I'm sure he would, he's on the verge of issuing some form of fatwa. His behaviour is outrageous and it is not the Islam that I or anyone I know recognises. Why? I hardly know this lad. In fact, the last time I saw him, he didn't say anything to me. Someone pointed out to me who he was. There's another cleric from Glodick ranting and raving about me. I don't know him. What are you scared of, lads? That I will bring communities together? Is that what you're scared of? That I'll help clean up this town? That I will fight to make sure that our holy places are pure from politics? This isn't dirty politics. This is the incitement of murder. That's what this is. I've been knocking on doors, and I cannot believe the level of support we have despite what these people have done. Got support, of course I've got support in the Bangladeshi community because it's the community that raised me, it's the community I'm from. It's a community in which my immediate family members live. And despite the best attempts of smears, people have come out and supported me. And for that I will be ever grateful. Openly supported me. Despite the smears and the slurs. It's easier for many of you who don't live in this community to be smeared by these people because they're nobodies to you. But these people, in the community I come from and the way it's interact, it's more than just gossip, isn't it? And people don't like being gossiped about or being smeared, and I found that out. Because what I've now taken for granted, some of my friends have experienced for the first time. And I look at them. And they said to me, Raja, why didn't you ask us to come and help you? And I said, the reason I didn't ask you was because I didn't want you to be hurt by these people the way you are now being hurt by them now. So you've seen me put photographs up of people I know. I've done that because I'm proud of them. And they want people to know that they're not scared of them because they found their own courage as well, which is why I've shared those pictures of me standing with some of my friends. It's easier for us. We don't live in that community that way. But for these people to do what they've done, I can never repay that. I then got a phone call, a text message actually, not a phone call, from someone I know in North Chadderton. There's a woman called Donna, I'll give her a name, Donna, who wanted to get a message to me. I used to play in the mud with her son, Brian. She wanted a message that she always thought there was something about me. And she wanted to say hello. And kind of, I suppose, see if I remembered her. Of course I remembered her. And I told her I didn't just go to school with her son, Brian. Brian was my friend. I even remembered where she lived and told her and shared that back. She's voting for me. She must be in her 70s now. Got a phone call today, I left them, from Royton South. She's voting for me. From Fitting Hill. From Limeside. Of course across Chadderton. Bardsley. Hollingwood. People are voting for me. Just behind Oldham Edge. Coldest, but St Mary's, what I've always called it. I dropped off leaflets there, not leaflets there, wind-up cards. People are voting for me. You are voting for me. Despite all the threats, despite all the intimidation, these people can make their own minds up and they can judge me based upon not my words, but my actions over the last 6 years. In the Asian communities and the Bangladeshi communities in particular, I've had some interesting, challenging conversations with my team. We do not fill in postal votes for other people. We're not getting involved in harvesting postal votes, none of that. If people contact us with postal votes, we ask them to fill them in themselves. I found that difficult. They found it difficult. And I understand why it's difficult, because in terms of rigging elections, postal votes are at the heart of it. So much so that I've come across people who genuinely believe that they hand over the postal votes to people. Irrespective of what it might say on the envelope, the accepted practice is handing over postal votes or completing them in front of people. Handing them over unsealed. I was in the house yesterday with someone. An old family friend and his daughter, who shouted his daughter across because she had a postal vote, and I put my hand on him. And she looked at me shocked. I said, listen. I called her niece. I said, listen, niece. If your dad wants you to fill your postal voting, that's fine. But you go and fill it in the other room, put your X where it is, put it in the envelopes and seal it. But it's clear to me that what I am advocating is not the norm. I've also canvassed on houses where people were clear. They had to hand over the postal votes. People have already been, and they've had to hand them over. Or else. Do I blame them? Do I heck? I was campaigning yesterday and a gentleman came to see me. I don't know him. He told me he'd heard about how I wasn't a Muslim and then he'd seen things for himself and he wanted to apologise. I said, what are you apologising for? Because he had 4 postal votes in his family and he's handed them over to Zaffar's team. Or people representing Zaffar, if it's not Zaffar's team, or claiming to represent Zaffar. And I looked at him and said, don't worry. I'm not judging you. And you could see the weight come off his shoulders. Because he felt he'd let me down. Even though he didn't know me, he'd worked out what sort of man I was. Postal votes in Oldham have been harvested on an industrial scale in a way I have never seen before. Perhaps it's because I've never been a candidate before. And now we have a situation where Oldham Council are complicit in covering up the fraud. Now remember, last time round, a few years ago, there was a High Court case about to convene in Oldham, and then Montaz's witnesses all kind of backtracked when the evidence was sufficient enough that the returning officer at the time, the Oldham Council Chief Executive Carolyn Wilkinson, admitted that her council staff had fallen short of the required standard, but claimed in her testimony that it hadn't been enough to affect the result. The result for Carolyn Wilkins was that she never presided over another election. She left the town. So this council has formed. This is what he's trying to do. There are 9 wards. I don't want that, sorry. I want a normal pen. There are 9 wards. There you go. In the constituency. Each of these wards has a number of polling stations. When you go and vote, you'll go and vote in a polling station. But the ward you belong to has a number of these. Some have 5, 6, 7. And then the ballot boxes in each polling station is sealed and taken to the civic centre to be counted. At the civic centre, what normally happens is that the ballot boxes from the various polling stations are combined and the results, the votes counted on a ward by ward basis. The postal votes that come in separately are separated and put into their respective wards. And what this allows to happen is two things. One, you get ward by ward results. And two, you also know what the postal votes were per ward. This is accepted practice. And this is what took place at the last general election. Along comes Harry Caffrell, who owes his job to Arood Shah and the Labour Party. Remember, and if you've seen him behave in the council meetings, you will see that he has overstepped the line time after time and the time in showing his Labour Party loyalties. He's interfered in the election process because he's the returning officer. And his elections officer, Jenna Madeley, sent me an email on a Sunday evening. I'm hoping she did that on a Sunday evening on purpose, that it would go missed and unnoticed. And what these people are now doing is that they're bringing the postal votes and then indiscriminately putting them into the ward counts. So postal votes from other wards are being mixed. So why would you do this? You're doing this for one reason and one reason only, as far as I'm concerned, is to hide postal vote fraud. One, okay, two reasons. One is to hide postal vote fraud. By mixing it all together, you don't know. You know, if you end up with Werner having 6,000 postal votes, you'd want to know, wouldn't you? If there's been a 500% uplift in postal votes in an area, you'd want to know and you'd query that. Well, this hides that. And the second thing it does, it prevents ward by ward analysis. Why would they want to prevent ward by ward analysis? Well, we know only through the analysis of the last general election of how Debbie Abrahams only won because of the overwhelming support she received in the Pakistani wards of St. Mary's and Alexander. Harry Caffrell now wants to prevent us from being able to analyse data that way, as well as hide where the postal votes came from. This is just aiding and abetting the rigging of an election. There's no reason why this needs to be done. And my instincts were to boycott tomorrow's count. I talked it through with my agent Gary, and I'm still of a mind to boycott tomorrow's count because I believe this election has been rigged. And the count tomorrow evening, the way in which it will be conducted, will help facilitating the rigging of an election. I do not make this accusation lightly. My dilemma has been that so many people have voted for me. My dilemma has been that so many people have pounded the streets for me, delivering leaflets, having conversations, and they want to go to the count. And the sort of man I am, I hesitate to use the term leader, but the sort of man I am, I'm not the type to let my people go into a place that I won't lead them into, that I won't go in alongside them, irrespective of what is taking place. So we are fighting tomorrow a rigged election. And I want you to all know that. We are fighting tomorrow a rigged election, and I want you to know that, not to use it as an excuse. I want you to know that so that you come out and vote. I spent most of my life fighting fights with one hand tied behind my back with the odds against me. It's not something new to me. And we can still win. If enough of you come out to vote, we can still win. This is not in their hands. They are doing this desperately to try and stop us. Because everything else they've tried to do has failed, so they've now resorted to rigging the way in which they count. The votes are counted. I've not shared this with you. This is a letter I received from Brabner solicitors. The response went off on Monday. Brabner solicitors are representing Jim McMahon and the Labour Party as their clients. The Labour Party are attempting to sue me, along with James, and apparently false statements concerning Mr. McMahon. Well, if the false statements are concerning Mr. McMahon, what's it got to do with the Labour Party? And it's regarding my election leaflet, one of the first ones. And please note, apparently, my election leaflet represents a breach of UK election law. Well, UK election law is a criminal matter. So why is a solicitor's firm contacting me? It also offends communications legislation containing highly defamatory and grossly offensive content, and infringes data protection law. So there's 3 laws apparently I'm breaking. Well, go to the police. Oh yeah, they've been to the police and they tried to frame me, and the police were partners in trying to frame me, and the CPS were partners in trying to frame me. So now McMahon has gone running to the Labour Party and used Labour Party funds, from what I can tell, to try and sue me. But this isn't a letter suing me, this is a letter trying to blackmail me. Do you think I'm going to surrender to blackmail? Do I look like the sort of man that surrenders to blackmail after everything I've gone through? Some background nonsense. The publication includes the following statements, and it did. Child sex exploitation. First, they claimed barefaced lies and that we were racist and far-right activists. Then they claimed that being gang raped did not destroy lives. Now that the truth is out after the council was forced to admit that children in Oldham were gang raped and trafficked, instead of supporting a public inquiry, has anyone heard McMahon support a public inquiry? Jim McMahon and the bit they've underlined is the bit they reckon is criminal or libelous. Jim McMahon and his team of Labour Party councillors are still refusing to tell us exactly how many of Oldham's children were abused this way. Why? What are they hiding? Who are they protecting? The evidence is overwhelming. McMahon was leader of Oldham Council during the period in which his council covered up the gang rape of white girls. That's a matter of fact, don't you? He was leader of the council. You've all seen the emails. Guess why McMahon never warned parents? And these are questions I'm asking. And so on. The publication contains other serious allegations against Mr. McMahon, such as regarding his purported assistance of criminals and involvement in corruption. Actually, I don't say that, which is why these statements are false and seriously defamatory. Oh, but look, if these statements are false and seriously defamatory, and McMahon denies them, why are they not subject the letter of this claim? Why are you not suing me for that? Our clients consider that your false allegations regarding child sexual exploitation are seriously offensive and cannot go uncorrected. The allegations represent a cynical and deliberate attempt by you to spread fake news. The cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of working-class white girls in Oldham is apparently fake news. That cover-up at the time when McMahon was leader of the council, apparently that's fake news. That fake news? And is that not something we've been campaigning on for the last 5 years? Your false allegations concerning sexual child exploitation has caused the greatest distress and professional harm, and accordingly the focus of this letter. Well, McMahon, what you've done to me in wanting me arrested and criminalised with your vendetta has caused me and my family significant harm. But unlike you, I don't have the Labour Party to pay my legal bills. And for the avoidance of any doubt, if they've caused you distress and personal and professional harm, why are you raising it now? I have been very clear on my position on your role for at least the last 4 years. Coward. That's what McMahon is, a coward. He's now hiding behind the money of the Labour Party. We'll bring it on. There is no good factual basis whatsoever for the statement. They go to use the review. The review found that there was no evidence of a political cover-up. The review found there was no evidence of a cover-up. Political cover-up. I didn't say political cover-up, I said cover-up. So they were introducing the word political. But the reason Andy Burnham's team found no evidence of a cover-up because their terms of reference was not to go looking for a cover-up. And that review has now been deemed to have been a cover-up itself. Otherwise, why would this council now be calling for a public inquiry? Apparently, he's your MP. Mr. McMahon has been acknowledged for the political leadership he has shown on the issue of CSE. Has he been acknowledged? Have you acknowledged McMahon for his political leadership on campaigning for justice for child sexual exploitation? Have you acknowledged that, people? Apparently he continues to stand firmly in support of victims. Have I missed it? Did I miss it? Has Mr. McMahon come out in support of a public inquiry? Have I missed it somewhere? You state that Mr. McMahon hid in Parliament and abused parents who were concerned for the safety of their children. I think being called a racist and far-right activist is abuse, don't you? You state that Mr. McMahon targeted people who dared to object to the rape of children. I believe that's why he targeted me and others. Who acknowledged it? Who acknowledged his hard work? Irish in me. Indeed, mate. Apparently, Mr. McMahon has himself brought forward and led a debate in Parliament regarding the issue of CSE exploitation in Oldham. Yeah, the debate he led was calling us racist and far right. Neither Ofsted nor the Home Office investigation. What Home Office investigation? Into the issue of CSE in Oldham found any wrongdoing by Mr. McMahon. Am I missing something? Was there a Home Office investigation into CSE in Oldham? Was there? Didn't it happen when we weren't looking? Has there been a Home Office investigation into CSE in Oldham? We have concluded the Oldham CSE report, the independent Oldham CSE report that has now been confirmed to have serious shortcomings by this very council. So you trying to use whatever this Andy Burnham's assurance review found out, will like to see it in court. Then he goes on with his nonsense and then it carries on and carries on. Indeed, during the mid-2010s, Mr. McMahon actually published numerous public statements regarding the issue of CSE whilst he was the head of Oldham Council. The public statement he made in his blog in 2014 was at a time when people hardly read the blog or the internet of a leader. If Mr. McMahon wanted to make a public statement, he would have stood up in the council chamber and issued a public statement. And the public statement he makes reference to came a number of years after the emails that were leaked via Huey MacDonald and Warren Bates, which includes details of a cover-up, because the BBC specifically referred to wanting the news to keep hidden. You had specifically asked us to, you've all seen that email and the subsequent emails. Further media coverage also included a feature by BBC Radio. Well, last I looked, BBC Radio, you thick pieces of Brabners. £700 an hour probably. Maybe more. Well, what's media coverage got to do with anything? Last time I looked, we elect our politicians, our political leaders. We don't look towards the BBC. Is McMahon seriously claiming, is the Labour Party seriously claiming, the BBC covered it at some point, so we didn't have to speak out about it? And apparently the issue was debated by Oldham Council in full council. Well, no. The issue was not debated in full council. whilst Jim McMahon was leader of the council. And it was live streamed and remains online today from a time when McMahon was leader of Oldham Council. Please show me where. Please show me where. Equally, in 2022, Mr. McMahon secured a parliamentary debate on the issue of CSC in Oldham. He did, to attack us. You all heard that debate. It followed the release of the assurance review. He did not abuse parents. Well, that's a matter of perspective, isn't it? I'm a parent and I felt he abused me. Many of you are parents. You decide if he abused you. In fact, you can come with me as witnesses. You can come with me as witnesses. Pauline, you can come with me to the High Court as a witness, along with as many more of you as possible. The Home Office Minister can rebut and criticise any concerned attempts to undermine the findings of the Independent Assurance Review and its investigators, when now this very council is confirming doubts in it. Otherwise there would not be a motion from the council and the opposition calling for a public inquiry, because I forced that. They wanted it covered up maybe, but I forced that by exposing that assurance review for what it was. I pulled out of the small print. How Gerard Jones had prevented survivors from giving testimony. I pulled out of the small print how the Home Affairs Select Committee contacted McMahon and his team whilst he was leader. And what was it? The passage of time? Giving us a reason? No. As Oldham Council leader, Mr. McMahon apparently published a blog dated yet. They're referring to 70 young people, blah, blah, blah. Well, listen. I'm not on about what happened in 2014 in terms of the number of victims, because the leader of Oldham Council, Arud Shah, in the last meeting she was leader last time, stood up and confirmed that the abuse was still happening today, in reference to the grooming gangs and CSE in this way. Or did I imagine that? That was live streamed as well, Brabners. Apparently, Mr. McMahon continued to discuss potential victims. On January 2021, Mr. McMahon stated the following on Facebook. Ooh, he said it on Facebook. Approximately 59,592 children and young people under the age of 18 live in Oldham. And then he goes on about a whole host of data. And I remember critiquing it at the time. None of this makes any reference to the victims of the grooming gangs. Specific to the grooming gangs. None of it does. So no. Because our critique of that time and remains is in that assurance review, they don't tell us how many children. What were we holding up? How many children, how many lies? Well, how many children? No one wants to tell any of us how many of our children were gang raped. But instead of the MP for the town taking offence alongside us and demanding answers, we are concerned with Mr. Mia's motives. Concerned with my motives all you want. My motives have got nothing to do with it. In fact, I'm clear on my motives. I want to clean up the town. I want justice for the victims. I want this town to heal, and I believe this town can only heal once this evil has been purged. Apparently, Mr. Meir has attempted quite outrageously to cause serious harm to Mr. McMahon. Well, I've not said anything new that I haven't been saying for the last 5 years in that leaflet. If this was serious harm, then why has he not acted earlier? Why didn't he act 4 years ago? And apparently, I dismissed Mr. McMahon's allegations against me as all lies. Well, they are all lies. Because I'd be in prison if they weren't. Wouldn't I, McMahon? This is a private law firm now threatening me with the police. First of all, the Representation of Peoples Act. We are instructed that our clients have reported your conduct to the police. Like I care. The police will obviously now need to review your statements with reference to the relevant law and investigate whether an offence has been committed and whether a referral to the Crown Prosecution Service is now required. Well, what's it got to do with you, Brabners? What are you threatening me with? How dare you try and blackmail me? Absolute scumbag law firm. Absolute scumbag law firm. Hired by Keir Starmer's Labour Party. Now we move on to the Communications Act 2003, which is another criminal offence. I know all about the Communications Act because they've been trying to prosecute me under that as well as the Representation of People Act. They have tried to prosecute me under the Representations of Peoples Act prior, and it was proven when I was being interviewed that the MP at the time, Debbie Abrahams, had reported me, had doctored my emails and my tweets and my correspondence with her to make it look like I'd said something I hadn't. Of course, Andy Burnham's politically Labour Party controlled police force never went and arrested Debbie Abrahams for attempting to frame a man, for speaking out against the cover-up of the gang rape of little girls. Communications Act. Apparently, the statement has caused Mr. McMahon gross offence and he will provide evidence regarding impact to the police at trial, if required and necessary. Have I not been calling him out for the last 4 years on this? Again, our clients will ask the police to investigate the commission of offences under the Communications Law offence. Then we move on to defamation. This is the best one. They are trying to sue me for alleging, I've claimed, and I haven't done this by the way, that people should avoid Mr. McMahon. They're trying to sue me for allegedly claiming people should avoid politicians. They're also trying to sue me for Mr. McMahon wrongfully misusing his position as an MP in order to abuse the parents of victims of sexual abuse. Where did we make reference to victims of sexual abuse? Parents of victims of sexual abuse. We didn't, did we? Nowhere. They've just inserted that thinking they're clever. Well, I'm not stupid. And to gaslight people who rightfully object to the rape of children. Were you gaslit when McMahon stood in Parliament and issued that statement with Debbie Abrahams, that debate, that adjournment debate that they secured? Did you feel like you were gaslit? And then the first one, so of course the last two are ridiculous. And the first one, Mr. McMahon has been involved in covering up serious sexual exploitation, abuse of children. Pause it there. They then claim I've said he's protected the perpetrators of sexual exploitation and abuse of children. I've never said he's protected the perpetrators. Not in that leaflet anyway. They just added that for good measure, thinking that I'm stupid again. No. But what I have said, and I have maintained from the outset, is that all of the evidence does clearly suggest that Mr. McMahon has been involved in the cover-up of serious CSC and abuse of children whilst he was leader of the council, him and his council. So this is what they want me to do. Oh, no. They also reckon I've breached data protection law. Do you know how I've breached data protection law? I have obtained personal data regarding Mr. McMahon. The personal data concerned includes Mr. McMahon's name. Apparently, the name Jim McMahon is personal data. Jim McMahon's name is found on your ballot papers. Apparently, the name Jim McMahon is personal data. And I've breached data protection laws. And accordingly, we reserve Mr. McMahon's right in respect of a parallel data protection complaint to the ICO and or civil claim against you. Well, bring it on. Bring it on, McMahon. I've breached his personal data. His name. I've named an MP. I've made reference to a politician who was leader of the council. Are we now not allowed? Is this what this country has come to? We cannot name politicians. We cannot name our MP. We cannot name an individual. His name is on the ballot paper of 80,000, 90,000 ballot papers. Yes, at least I can spell it right, Sheila. At least I can spell it right. Would you have preferred me to have named him just a samosa nibbler? At least I can spell it right. We also reserve Mr. McMahon's right in relation to potential civil claims against you for malicious falsehoods and misuse of private information and or harassment. Will bring on those potential civil claims, which suggests they've been to the police and the police have said no, so they're now looking at civil claims. My conduct has caused significant harm, and apparently it's an attempt to damage Mr. McMahon and the Labour Party's prospect in the upcoming election. No, I've done what I've done, and have been doing for what I've been doing for the last 5 years, to force a public inquiry into the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. So this is what they want me to do. You will take down the publication from social media. You will cease distributing the publication in hard copy immediately. You will not republish the publication. Well, the leaflets have already gone out. You will provide Mr. McMahon with a letter of apology and correction in respect of the publication. The wording of such a letter to be agreed with us on behalf of our clients, and the wording of the letter must also be posted by you on your social media account and be printed on the account for 28 days. You will pay compensation to Mr. McMahon. You will pay our client's legal costs. Legal costs including the letter claiming that using his name is a breach of data protection. In the event that the above steps are not agreed, our client will consider whether any further civil, criminal or regulatory action is required. You need to understand something. I have risked everything for each and every one of you and the communities you come from. Of course, I've responded to this and I've told them where to go, using the legal framework I need to, and again, it's cost me money and all of that stuff. We can win this election if enough of us go out to vote. And we can only win this election if you go out to vote and you encourage others to go out to vote. And if we don't win this election, then what this is. How much more do you want me to endure? How much more? And I'm laughing at it too as well, Sue. The letter. But we're fighting the machinery of the Labour Party now. That man's got the Labour Party. So I look forward to, if he goes to trial, I look forward to it because I'll call Andy Burnham as a witness. I'll call Keir Starmer as a witness. I'll call the previous chief executive as a witness. I'll call the borough solicitor as a witness. I'll call them all. And it will stand and fall on whether those emails that we released 5 years ago, and if they weren't true, why has the Burnham inquiry investigation, as rigged as it was, still confirm every allegation I made? Did it not? Yes, it did. You have idiots like Mark Mintz, Brian Hoban, smearing me. You have people like that Teresa, who I don't know, going online now and ranting and raving at me. Yes, Sally Ann, it's not been signed by anyone in particular, because no one in the right mind will put the name to this. You've got to go out and vote for me tomorrow. And if we don't cross the line, if we don't win, we need to have enough of us that have voted for me. We'll scare the hell out of them. Otherwise, it's over. You know Hoban isn't going to fight for you. You know Markins isn't going to fight for you. You know the likes of Lewis Quigg aren't capable on their own of fighting for you. You know why they've targeted me, and they've targeted me relentlessly for 5 years, 6 years. I'm pleading with you. Help me. Go out and vote tomorrow. We know Labour has got a massive majority. We know the chances are that we'll get wiped out and Matt Mann will return as MP. But if we're going to go down, we need to go down fighting, so that something good can emerge from everything that I've endured. My name is Raja Mir. I am, for the last night, your independent parliamentary candidate for Oldham, West Chadderton and Royton. For the last 5 years and more, I've been running what I make reference to as a working class insurgency against the Labour Party and the way in which our town has been governed. My hometown of Oldham has been governed. For some reason, I refuse to look the other way. And it has left me on the verge of being broken. What happens next is entirely up to you. Good night.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011, he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.